I have decided on balance to move the election by 4 weeks to the 17th of October.
Hello there, I'm Grant Walker. Today, elections, subsidy extensions, and some advice for you. Well, as you've just heard, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has decided to delay the election until October 17. Ms Ardern said the re-emergence of COVID-19 in the community was a cause for concern during the election period. And as a result, Parliament will reconvene tomorrow and the dissolution of Parliament will now be Sunday the 6th of October. National actor New Zealand First had all called on Ms Ardern to delay the election after concerns were raised at the latest COVID-19 outbreak in South Auckland, which led to the imposition of an alert level 3 lockdown in Auckland and level 2 elsewhere around the country, made it virtually impossible for parties to campaign. Well, shortly I'll be joined by Business New Zealand CEO Kirk Hope, who will discuss that and other issues. But first, I'll run through some advice from the Business New Zealand network. The Prime Minister has said all businesses should display the QR code for the government's Tracer app to ensure it's as easy as possible to contact, trace, confirm cases and isolate people where necessary to prevent community spread. The use of masks is now being encouraged, although not compulsory, and 5 million more have been made available from government stocks, and masks will now be available in supermarkets. In addition, the government has today set out the criteria for a new nationwide wage subsidy covering the period that Auckland is at COVID-19 alert level 3. It's also removed the revenue drop test for the COVID-19 leave support scheme. The new wage subsidy is forecast to cost about $510 million and cover 470,000 jobs. It's also removed the revenue drop and negatively impacted tests for the COVID-19 leave support scheme. More on that soon. The mortgage deferral scheme is also being extended from its current end date of 27 September to 31st of March 2021. So here's what the Finance Minister had to say.
A lot of businesses outside Auckland rely on customers from the city, so making the wage subsidy nationwide is a recognition of that. It is also a recognition of the impact that Alert Level 2 settings have, particularly on hospitality and retail businesses in other parts of the country, and we want to make sure that we're helping these businesses as well.
Joining me now is Business New Zealand CEO Kirk Hope. Kirk, will go through the announcement, or three announcements really. The leave support scheme has been simplified. In what way?
Well, they've removed the requirement to demonstrate a revenue drop for businesses that want to apply on behalf of their employees for the sick leave payment. So what that means is they've really removed all of the impediments for an employer to make the application on behalf of their employee. That enables more people who might be susceptible to COVID, that is with whether they've got some pre-existing condition, or whether they've been sick, or whether they've had to self-isolate, or whether they've had to quarantine. So that enables them to access pretty quickly and easily the sick leave support payment.
The new wage subsidy scheme, what's different with it?
Well, what the government has said is it's an extension. Applications are of course extended until 1st of September. And the revenue drop is calculated over a 40% revenue drop over any 2-week period between the 12th of August and the 10th of September. So that's a bit different from the extended wage subsidy scheme where it was over a month. So this is over a 2-week period.
So this is better?
Yeah, it's probably going to be easier for businesses to comply with, and it matches the circumstances better.
All right. Mortgage deferral scheme, that's extended to the 31st of March. Who's that going to help?
Well, it's going to help anyone with a mortgage, basically, that might have lost their job or might have had their income impacted by COVID. So what that is an agreement essentially between the Reserve Bank and the retail banks to enable that to happen. So that, as you say, it's extended to 31st of March. That means that people who might have had lost their job or been impacted can apply for a deferral until that day.
Is it important though, because a lot of people are saying if you can afford to carry on with your mortgage without going for the holiday, do so, because you've worked in the banking industry, and is it one of those things where, gosh, I better take advantage of it, but I don't have to?
Without wanting to give financial advice, Grant.
No, of course.
What I'd say is, look, that's probably right. If you can afford to pay it, continue to pay it. But actually, if your circumstances have changed, you might want to have a look at reducing your costs. And this is almost certainly everybody's largest cost. So they'd be right to look at it.
Another question that people will ask is this only in Auckland, for Auckland, or the rest of the country? Bearing in mind that Auckland is in level 3, the rest of the country is level 2, at least for another couple of weeks, if not longer.
Yeah, and interestingly, what the government has done here is they've extended the new wage subsidy for the entire country. And I think that's actually quite smart, because even though it's only Auckland that's in alert level 3, that does have impacts on the rest of the country. And I'll give you an example. A lot of Aucklanders were travelling to places like Queenstown, Rotorua, and skiing in Turoa. Those places now won't be having the benefit of those of New Zealand Aucklanders going to them, and they will have their income impacted in some way, shape or form. So there will be a whole range of examples like that around the country, where simply less people moving around will impact people's businesses, and they'll want to try and access, I think, the wage subsidy scheme.
Have you got any advice for businesses who we just came through it all, if you like, and we got back to as normal as we could have been under level 1? Now, a good part of the country, or in fact, a third of the country is in this. And it's not really a lockdown, but it's the level 3, where some businesses think they can't operate, but actually they might be able to, and they might have learnt lessons from the first time around. What are businesses saying to you, and what advice are you giving back?
Well, our key advice here is that actually under alert level 3, there is quite a lot of business that can still be done. Clearly, with a couple of exceptions, you're not allowed to have contact with customers or suppliers, people on your premises, but you can continue to operate. And we've seen a lot of businesses pivot to click and collect, and they did that under the old alert level 3, and they've been able to pivot into that pretty quickly. The other piece of advice that I would have is, one of the things that enables us to get back to business as quick as possible and move back down the alert levels is contact tracing. So those QR codes, there's a reason why the government's made those mandatory. Those are one of the best ways that we can ensure that the authorities can quickly track and trace people who might have been in contact with COVID. The quicker that we can get to being able to do that on a mass scale, the quicker we can get back to kind of normal business, because they can manage clusters and so on.
All right, now finally I just want to talk about the election. Has been sort of delayed a little bit. No one picked October 17. Everyone was thinking November 23, and some, I'm sure, other National Party would have preferred a March date. But nonetheless, the Prime Minister's coming with October 17, the date that no one was really picking. What does it mean? Does it mean actually anything for business, or are we just too busy focused elsewhere?
Well, I mean, look, I do think that a lot of businesses are really focused on what's in front of them, or what's not in front of them in some cases. I think the date is important for one reason. That is because post-election, you should have greater policy certainty, and that's one of the things that will help contribute to sort of an economic rebound. That is, what does the policy framework look like? And that's going to be driven by, of course, the result of the election. So having that done and dusted will be a key component for certainty. Does October make a big difference compared to September? Not really. I guess it does allow people to campaign. It does allow business to understand better what policies particular political parties will be talking about. And one key area where I know businesses are really interested in is tax policy. So another month means maybe we get a little bit more detail on some of those big key policy areas.
It's interesting because a lot of policy actually has come out. It's just that we haven't noticed it because we're too busy with COVID. So businesses, you do need to, in some cases, look for it.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I mean, I do think we've got to discern between what future-looking, for example, economic and business policy looks like, and separate that from what the COVID response policy has been. A couple of things, there have been a couple of big announcements around infrastructure, of course, both by National and Labor, but we do still need to see, I think, a lot more detail in some of those other big policy areas.
Thank you, Kirk.